Urgent! The US Airborne Special Forces have been deployed to Ukraine. An air armada, hundreds of fighter jets will reduce the Kremlin to ashes. A secret squadron of death. The US and NATO are already in the skies over Ukraine. American aces are avenging Kyiv. This was what Moscow feared most of all. The Pentagon has secretly sent its best fighters. This has blown up the information space. The elite F-16 group is already taking out the Russians. But is this really true? Meanwhile, Fedorov has outplayed everyone. Ukraine's unprecedented arms triumph. All this and more coming up. Watch until the end. This is Ukraine Today, Renata Aslanova, and the latest events. It has become known, a squadron of death has appeared in the skies over Ukraine. It was reported that an elite F-16 unit has been formed, bringing together the best Ukrainian, American, and Dutch aces. This is an airborne special forces unit that turns Russian missiles and drones into a pile of scrap metal before they even reach their target. A death sentence for Russian missiles and drones. Sensational information, the squadron was formed under total secrecy in recent weeks. This unit has become a steel shield over the Kyiv region. Now, any attempt by the Russians to strike turns into an instant disaster for them in the air. According to the publication, American pilots with vast experience in Afghanistan have joined the fight. One of the top pilots recently took part in operations in the Middle East, after which he joined the defense of Ukraine. Flying alongside him are Dutch aces who graduated from Europe's elite air combat schools. They possess tactics that are considered unattainable for the enemy. According to Intelligence Online, the Western veterans have signed temporary contracts. They work in short rotations lasting 6 months. They have no official ranks or names in the documents. This is Ukraine's secret weapon, impossible to track. The hunt for calibers has begun, and journalists are stunned. Squadrons go out daily for the harvest, shooting down Russian missiles, particularly calibers, Kh-101s, and Geran-5 drones. F-16s are used for patrols, including at night, to maximize radar coverage and the ability to respond quickly in the sky. The Kremlin's biggest nightmare is the sniper's eye. The publication notes that the main value of Western pilots lies in their experience working with cutting-edge equipment. Specifically, this refers to the sniper targeting and reconnaissance pods, which are called the eyes of the aircraft. This system allows the pilot to see targets at great distances, track fast-moving missiles and drones even in complete darkness or through thick clouds. However, it should be noted that all this information comes from the statements of a single French publication. Yuri Inat, head of the communications department of the Ukrainian Air Force Command, noted that Ukraine is actively cooperating with its partners within the aviation coalition, but it is Ukrainian pilots who are carrying out combat flights. So is this an official denial, or is it just that the enemy shouldn't know all the details yet? We'll see what happens next. We are following the developments. And that's not all. Ukraine is receiving an air fleet that any NATO country would envy. This was stated by Volodymyr Zelensky. We're talking about 250 of the latest fighter jets. Numbers that make the Kremlin's blood run cold. 150 Swedish Gripens and 100 French Rafales. This is not just a reinforcement, it's a complete game changer.
As of today, Ukraine has agreements for the delivery of 150 Gripen military aircraft and 100 Rafale aircraft. In our opinion, these are the best aircraft in the world available today. Of course, there are also F-16s. The Ukrainian Air Force currently has F-16s in service. They're not new, but the aircraft I mentioned earlier are new.
The president made an important point that changes everything. Our F-16s are excellent machines, but this armada is made up of completely new aircraft straight from the factories. This is the latest in technology. So what exactly makes these planes so good? The best radars, long-range meteor missiles, stealth technology. The Rafale and Gripen are killers of Russian Sukhois. The Swedes designed their aircraft specifically to destroy Russian aviation in the harshest conditions. The Gripen is capable of taking off from an ordinary highway just 500 meters long. It can be serviced by regular soldiers right in the field within an hour, and it's ready for combat again. These Swedish monsters can take off from any road and deliver a deadly strike with meteor missiles disappearing from radar.
This is exactly what Ukraine needs. Sweden developed the Gripen at the time with the idea of a potential war with Russia in mind, which is why it was made to be a simple, reliable, and most importantly, a mass-produced fighter jet. The Gripen is a living, mobile part of the defense, which reduces the vulnerability of the fleet and increases the pace of operations.
For Russia, the weapons problems are only just beginning. Fedorov announced a historic decision from Ramstein. Ukraine is simply going to be flooded with weapons. Ukraine's partners have confirmed $38 billion in aid for 2026. This is a total rearmament: drones, air defense, artillery, and scarce Patriot missiles. The Kremlin did not expect this scale. The Ukrainian fist is turning to steel. Fedorov revealed shocking figures. More than $2.5 billion will go toward a swarm of Ukrainian drones, $2 billion for an impenetrable air defense shield, and hundreds of millions for the Pearl Initiative. Artillery shells and Ukraine's naval power will receive powerful funding. The occupiers are being prepared for a real hell on all fronts. And that's not all. By order of Volodymyr Zelensky, a sensational agreement has been reached. Europe is opening its secret warehouses and urgently handing over Patriot missiles to Ukraine. The quantity of supplies will be determined after coordination with the leadership of the respective countries. Ukraine's skies are being sealed tight.
As a result of Ramstein, the partners confirmed one of the largest budgets for supporting Ukraine, $38 billion for the year 2026. It is our sincere hope to achieve the most rapid and efficient shipping and delivery timeframes possible.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Shock, Ramstein sensation, weapon floods, cash tsunamis, and systemic army reforms. Together, this is no longer just support. It's a direct statement about turning the tide of the war in Ukraine's favor. The moment of truth is coming. After this, the balance of power changes before our eyes. See the details.
One of the largest military aid packages of the entire war. The new Ramstein meeting ended with a major victory for Ukraine and a personal triumph for Defense Minister Mykhailo Fedorov. So, as a result of the meeting, the partners confirmed the allocation of $38 billion in military aid to Ukraine. The funds will go towards drones, air defense systems, and Patriot missiles.
It is highly significant that the Ramstein format has been successfully preserved, despite various changes in strategic approaches within the government of the United States of America, particularly when the administration of President Donald Trump focused heavily on the commercial sale of weaponry. The Ramstein format remains one of the most essential and key mechanisms that allows for comprehensive medium-term planning, looking several months ahead for the procurement and acquisition of necessary military armaments.
For example, Minister Fedorov stated that more than $6 billion have already been allocated in specific aid packages, including over $2.5 billion for Ukrainian drones, more than $500 million for the Purell program, $2 billion for air defense, as well as funds for artillery ammunition, preparation for naval operations, and other areas.
We see that Russia cannot defeat us on the ground. We see that Russia is waging war against our civilian population. Russia is targeting our civilian infrastructure, our heating plants, and our power stations. I would like to thank you for your support. This is very important to us. We continue to fight against Russian aggression. And yes, our strategy is working.
It is also worth noting that Ukraine has reached an agreement with a number of European partners for the urgent delivery of Patriot missiles from their stockpiles. For security reasons, the quantity is, of course, not being disclosed.
In the future, Ukraine needs reliable security guarantees. I am absolutely confident that the flow of vital American weaponry to Ukraine will continue. As I have already said, about 90% of Ukraine's critically important air defense needs are met by Patriot missile systems, and I am absolutely confident that this flow will continue.
At the forefront of those ready to ensure this flow, as is now traditional, are London and Berlin. For example, the United Kingdom is allocating £500 million for air defense and another £150 million for the Purell initiative. In total, £3 billion have been allocated for military aid to Ukraine in 2026. This time, Germany has focused on drones. At least £1 billion will be allocated for the purchase of drones. They are also investing in air defense and in the training and equipping program for the newly created drone assault units of the Ukrainian armed forces, totaling €11.5 billion.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization itself is deeply interested in the development of such protocols, in actively and consistently engaging with Ukraine, in actively assisting Ukraine to implement the so-called Purell initiative, to purchase American-made weaponry using European financial resources, and at the very same time, in actively participating in the creation of new joint military-industrial complex structures alongside European partners.
Norway was also a pleasant surprise. For 2026, $7 billion have been allocated for Ukraine. This includes drones, air defense systems, artillery, as well as the purchase of weapons from the United States.
This country is very wealthy and it is providing quite active support to Ukraine. Furthermore, it is precisely these significant financial contributions that have now become quite substantial in their overall scale and impact, effectively allowing for the necessary coverage and support of exactly what the United States is not supplying at this particular moment in time.
Belgium, Sweden, Denmark, Spain, Canada, Iceland, Australia, Portugal, Turkey, Slovenia, as well as the Baltic countries also joined the initiative at the recent Ramstein meeting. Most of those mentioned have focused primarily on purchasing American weapons.
The current framework we are looking at now, when we see the allocation of such exceptionally large and significant amounts of capital, provides us with a unique opportunity to discuss strategy and the formation of certain specific requests for the long-term future. And perhaps most significantly of all, this format clearly demonstrates that the strategic plans laid out by Vladimir Putin to halt both economic and military aid to Ukraine in the near future have ultimately proven to be a complete failure. And the entire Kremlin strategy was fundamentally based on this, on the calculated tactic of dragging out the time as long as possible.
At the same time, it's worth noting that right after Ramstein, the next meeting of leaders on military issues is taking place at the Munich conference. And the fact that the US has come there for the first time with an expanded delegation clearly indicates that the states do not intend to distance themselves from the defense of Europe.
The aviation fist of retribution? Hundreds of fighter jets for Ukraine. The verdict for Russian skies has been signed. France delivers a decisive blow. A new batch of legendary Mirages is already on the starting line, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. What will happen when this armada goes on the hunt? Watch for all the details. Anti-ballistic missiles, guided aerial bombs, and a new batch of Mirage 2000 aircraft.
The French side has announced preparations to transfer Mirage 2000 aircraft to Ukraine. Discussions also covered accelerating aircraft deliveries and continuing work on record volumes of AASM Hammer-guided aerial bombs. At the same time, cooperation continues on the supply and accelerated production of Aster missiles. The provision of long-range weapons, particularly Scalp missiles, was discussed separately.
The new package of French military aid to the Ukrainian armed forces is admittedly impressive, but I'd like to talk separately about the Mirages.
These are specialized military aircraft from the last millennium, but they remain highly effective and reliable platforms that successfully carry out and complete combat missions, mainly at this point. They are launching so-called gliding aerial bombs, which are jet-powered, much like the precision-guided French Hammer smart bombs. It's a good bomb, which is essentially highly accurate and allows for striking Russian military targets dozens of kilometers behind the front line. Plus, this aircraft is equipped with avionics that provide excellent ground visibility. In other words, this is something our old Soviet aircraft, the MiG-29 and Su-27, can't do. Their radars are equipped with poor filters for ground interference. But the Mirage has really good radars. They work well both over land and over water.
Regarding the number of Mirages being discussed, there are no specific figures, but there are some assumptions about how many aircraft Ukraine might receive from France.
That's why I think right now they're completing the first squadron for us in terms of numbers, delivering them in pairs, in flights. So the first squadron, meaning up to 12 Mirage aircraft, should be with us in the near future. And then, of course, they will form a second squadron depending on the supply capabilities.
In addition, earlier Zelensky announced the purchase of 150 Gripen fighters and 100 Rafales.
The year 2035, there are clear delivery deadlines specified. The point is that at the moment, the French side is capable of producing up to 3 Rafale aircraft per month. Currently, there is a question of increasing Rafale production to 5 units per month.
And here the question arises, will Ukraine actually need these particular aircraft in 10 or 15 years?
So if we talk about what would be better to buy in 15 years, that's an important point to consider. Right now, yes, of course, it's not Gripen that's needed, but then again, how many Gripens are we talking about? A squadron, 2, so a brigade, again, the same brigade as with Mirages, let's say 24 aircraft. So we need 24 Gripens in order for them to perform the maximum number of tasks. For standard tasks, even a single squadron, 12 aircraft, would be enough. Well, plus 2 more aircraft in reserve, maybe a backup, so 14 or 15 planes would be sufficient. It's the same story with the Rafale. So right now we need at least a squadron, or better yet, a brigade of those same Rafales. So how many planes is that? Well, up to 50 at most, that's the maximum, but definitely not 250. And in the next 15 years, as unmanned aviation develops, we will require 250 heavy-duty drones, similar to the Kizil Elma. Right now, there's the Turkish MIS project. They're looking ahead. They're not buying, say, Gripens or Rafales for themselves. Why would they? If in the future, 90% of tasks will be carried out mainly by drones, heavy drones that aren't limited by the physiological needs of a human, meaning a pilot, then what's the point?
But still, when it comes to purchasing these aircraft, the question arises as to whether Ukraine can actually afford them financially.
Another key point is the cost of the Rafale. Everything will depend on their price. The price currently being quoted by the French side is around 200 million euros. So again, the question is whether they will sell to us at the domestic price. That is the price for the French armed forces, which is significantly lower. Or alternatively, it will be according to international contracts, and international contracts mean more than 200 million euros. That's a very serious amount. At the moment, a possible deal amount is being mentioned. It's in the range of up to 5 to 50 billion euros. That's a significant sum. And accordingly, the question will arise as to whether the Ukrainian side actually has the funds, not even whether France has the aircraft available.
At the same time, if everything works out, with such a number of fighter jets, Ukraine could enter the top 10 countries in the world in terms of air force power and become one of the strongest in Europe. Sensational news. Ukraine unveiled a weapon terrifying the Kremlin, exceeding all expectations. This breakthrough by Ukrainian engineers outclasses all analogs. HIMARS is no longer the benchmark. The conveyor of retribution has been launched and will not stop, and this is just the warm-up. Watch for more details. The mass production of strike and reconnaissance drones, naval unmanned vehicles, artillery and missiles, all of this has transformed Ukraine from an arms importer into a full-fledged producer of modern weaponry.
Ukraine is now officially launching the full serial production of its very first ballistic missile.
Ukraine is developing a universal missile system based on the HIMARS principle.
Ukraine has launched serial production of Octopus interceptor drones.
A Ukrainian company has developed ground-based robotic systems equipped with electronic warfare modules.
The Ukrainian defense industry has made a leap that just a few years ago seemed impossible.
Ever since the beginning of 2022, Ukraine has consistently demonstrated and showcased such an extraordinarily high and impressive level of creativity and ingenuity that absolutely none of our various partner countries had previously anticipated or even imagined from us. We have shown just how inventive and creative we can be in achieving dominance at sea, even without our own fleet or flotilla, yet still ensuring complete control over the Black Sea thanks to maritime drones.
Today, long-range capability has become a priority, and drones of various types are the foundation of the defense industry. This is exactly what Ukraine is betting on.
110 billion for drones. Ukraine has increased its overall manufacturing output threefold.
It is precisely through drones that Ukraine compensates for the shortage of missiles and achieves parity with Russia in the air.
In fact, for the time being, unmanned drones remain the primary and most dominant means of striking targets, even when we are specifically discussing long-range strategic capabilities. That is to say, long-range drones, or more specifically long-range precision strike drones, they continue to remain dominant in the field. Consequently, comparing these systems to traditional missiles or other sophisticated types of strike weapons is, for now, not entirely fair or technically accurate. However, once we finally reach the stage of mass serial production for advanced missile weaponry, of course, the overall strategic situation will inevitably change.
And this is the key change in the war. Russia no longer has a technological monopoly, not even in the air. And again, we shouldn't forget about the sea, which Ukraine can control even without a navy. And it's all thanks to maritime unmanned systems.
The use of Magura has inflicted over $500 million in losses on the Russian fleet, according to Ukrainian intelligence estimates. Together with other platforms, particularly Sea Baby, this has systematically complicated the enemy's presence and basing in the Black Sea. On December 20th, 2025, Ukraine and Portugal signed a joint statement on partnership in the production of maritime drones.
And this is yet another significant change. Today, partners are not just supplying weapons, but are entering into joint production.
Ukraine and Portugal have agreed to jointly produce naval drones.
The Czech Republic's largest defense company is launching ammunition production in Ukraine.
Ukraine and Britain will start producing interceptor drones to combat suicide drones.
But let's get back to the range. Drones. This is not the only argument in this matter. A separate area is the missile program. We're talking, of course, about the well-known Neptune, which, after modernization, transformed from an anti-ship system that sank the cruiser Moskva into a long-range missile for striking ground targets.
This was, I think, one of those presentations that we had been waiting for so long, the long-range Neptune. And this is, after all, a more high-tech missile, which is used in a targeted, precise, almost surgical manner.
But Ukraine's missile arsenal is much broader, and as the president of Ukraine said in December 2025, it is being actively used.
I'll be frank, Ukraine is already using cruise missiles today. Neptunes, long-range Neptunes, Polyanitsia, Flamingo, as well as Sapsan. To be honest, we've started.
This is Ukraine's long arm. There is little talk about such systems, but their presence changes the enemy's calculations. Less publicity, more results. There are also results in the production of mortar and artillery munitions, but it is not simply just a matter of ammunition.
Today, Ukraine produces more 2 S-22 Bogdana self-propelled artillery units per year than the French company Nexter, which manufactures the Caesar self-propelled artillery systems. These are some of the first wheeled self-propelled artillery units that we received from our partners in 2022, the Caesar self-propelled artillery systems. In fact, during the course of last year, Ukraine successfully produced more advanced wheeled self-propelled artillery units than the total number of such systems produced worldwide in any single typical year. Not just in France, but worldwide.
And the Ukrainian defense industry has no intention of stopping or even slowing down, so Ukraine, together with its partners, will continue to develop defense projects.
Ukraine and Poland will jointly modernize the MiG-29s that the Polish side will provide.
A range of drones, air defense, and aviation. Ukraine is deepening its defense cooperation with the Netherlands.
France has officially announced plans to deepen its strategic cooperation with Ukraine in the specialized field of drones.
In addition, Ukraine's Minister of Defense Mykhailo Fedorov is announcing new developments. For example, a Ukrainian counterpart to reconnaissance drones like the DJI Mavic and the Russian Molniya. And of course, as part of strengthening its defense capabilities, the Ministry of Defense continues to digitize the front and is implementing a new drone management system. These are not isolated experiments, but systematic work by the defense industry. During the full-scale war, the Ukrainian military-industrial complex has learned the most important thing: to respond quickly to challenges on the battlefield.
Every single year, Ukraine continues to astonish the entire global community with groundbreaking new inventions and sophisticated technological innovations. And in a very real sense, it is fundamentally redefining the established rules of modern warfare, not only the war currently unfolding in Ukraine, but also the rules of warfare in general across the entire international landscape.
The Ukrainian defense industry is no longer just surviving, it is developing. The defense sector has become systematic, technological, and large-scale. This means one thing: Ukraine enters any negotiations not empty-handed, but with weapons it is capable of producing itself. What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments. Give this video a like. Stay up to date with the most important news. There's more to come.